Well, it sure looks like John Calipari put together a solid roster at Arkansas for his first season, but are the Hogs not as talented as we thought they were?
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, the Pod at the Palace edition. Curtis Wilkerson here with you this afternoon on the eve of the big football game for the Razorbacks at Oklahoma State in Stillwater. But we're going to talk a little bit of hoops here. A lot of things to dive into. A couple things in particular that we want to talk about. A little scheduling news, and then also this weird graphic that's been floating around about Arkansas and maybe how talented or not talented this team is. Found it very interesting, but we'll talk about it. Let's start with a little bit of a scheduling nugget, though, where basically something that we kind of already knew was going to happen has been confirmed by John Rothstein. He's really good at that, if you hadn't noticed. But if you remember a while back, John Calipari mentioned the possibility of finalizing a scrimmage and exhibition game against Kansas, Bud Walton Arena in Fayetteville. And Rothstein confirmed that that's going to happen. So sometime in October, we don't have the date right away, but Bill Self and the Jayhawks are going to come down to Arkansas for a scrimmage. And, listen, while it won't count in the win-loss column for the season, this is a game that can really help a team when the season rolls around. I think we all understand that. For whatever reason, Arkansas is making a habit out of playing these exhibition Super Bowls every year, which, hey, I mean, fine by me. Any game is a cool game if it involves basketball. I'm a basketball guy. I like it. Like, you wish it was a regular season game, but pretty cool nonetheless. I think we probably learned last year that you need to take exhibition results with like the ultimate grain of salt, right? I mean, Arkansas beats Purdue. Purdue winds up in the national title game, and Arkansas falls flat on its face, right? The year before, Arkansas goes to Texas, gets blasted by 30 points, and then they wind up in the Sweet 16. So, these things help you, but they're not really indicative of what's to come, when the actual games start being played and it counts and the lights are a little bit brighter. But this is great for so many reasons. I mean, first of all, it's a charity exhibition, so all the proceeds go to a good cause. And I don't know what that's going to be yet, but that's always really cool. You love to see that. I think it's huge for the fans. Razorback fans are so excited about the start of the John Calipari era, as they should be. Nothing wrong with that. But there's only like one opening left on the non-conference schedule for a decent home game. And the SEC schedule is a little bit light on the home game. So if you can't get a regular season game in Bud Walton Arena, when it's going to be packed out, a full house every night, the least you could do is get a really solid scrimmage. This is going to be cool. You remember how the fan base, they showed up and showed out for that Purdue game. It was an awesome atmosphere. It was a lot of fun. Everybody enjoyed it. You're going to get the same kind of vibes for this Kansas game. Will be good for the team. Will be cool for the fans. So I'm excited about that. I do think it lays the foundation potentially for a home and home series moving forward with Kansas. I mean, Coach Cal's not immune to that. He just did it with Gonzaga recently. So getting this exhibition now could lead to maybe scheduling some actual games down the road with them. Remember, Cal got a late start to the scheduling just with the nature of when he got the job. He was focused on recruiting and getting a team first, and then he moved on to the schedule. So a lot of teams already had their schedules complete, and so they didn't have room to add games. So in the future, I know he wants to get some marquee opponents in Bud Walton Arena. Maybe this is an avenue and an opportunity to be able to do that down the road. So I think it could be good. Arkansas needs this, though. They need it. They need this test in a major, major way before you play Baylor in a top 10 team in the first week of the season. Just that alone, I think, makes this worth it for Arkansas for so many reasons. I mean, Jonas Adu needs to see Hunter Dickinson before we get into the season, because the one thing about Adu is he was so vastly improved. He was an all SEC performer, had some huge games, double doubles, good rim protector, all that. But against some of the top competition in terms of big men in the country, he struggled a little bit. And a lot of guys do, but you want him to be able to take the next step. When he faced Zach Edey and Ryan Kalkbrenner or Tolu Smith or Janai Broom, he didn't have his best performances in those games. That's an area of needed improvement for him. You see Hunter Dickinson in the preseason, who's going to be, one of the top 2 or 3 big men in the country. That's a great barometer to see what kind of progress was made. I think Trevin Brazile needs to face a physical 4-man like KJ Adams to see if he's really embraced that attack dog mentality that John Calipari is trying to instill in him. Boogie Flan, true freshman, he needs to be locked up by one of the best perimeter defenders in the country in DeJuan Harris. That's a great challenge for him. Carter Knox, I think he needs to be challenged to try to defend a scoring wing, a veteran like AJ Storr, who's going to be very similar to guys that you see in the SEC. So at the end of the day, I think regardless of how this goes in the final result, it's just it's a big time learning experience and an opportunity for this team to grow. At the end of the day, Arkansas will be better for having done it. It's a cool game. Bill Self coming to town. Bill Self versus John Calipari, whether it counts or not, it's must-see TV, and I think it's going to be a really, really cool deal for Razorback fans. I'm excited. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. It helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job right now might be open to the perfect role. You never know. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So basically, if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're probably not looking in the right place. In LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats right now. You might not have time or the resources to go through the hiring process. It can be tricky. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make that process easier. It's even just, they launched a feature recently that helps you write job descriptions. It takes time, man. And to have a little bit of a help in that process, it can be really beneficial, can make things easier and quicker for you. Over 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your jobs for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right. Well, now that the scrimmage with Kansas is official, although we're still kind of waiting on a date here, it's going to be a fun preseason treat for Razorback fans, but we're still kind of waiting for the official non-conference slate to be fully finalized. As far as I can tell, piecing this together, Arkansas has room to add one more game to that non-conference schedule. Of course, you've got the Big Four there with Baylor in Dallas on November 9th. You've got Illinois and Kansas City on Thanksgiving. You've got at Miami for the ACC SEC Challenge on December 3rd, Michigan at Madison Square Garden for the Jimmy V Classic on December 10th. Those are all great games. The North Little Rock game against UCA, that's December 14th. And the rest of the games are at Bud Walton Arena. So not the most exciting slate in the world, I'm not going to lie to you. But you open with Lipscomb on November 6th. Obviously, Arkansas played them at Simmons Bank Arena last year. Troy on November 13th, Pacific on the 16th, Little Rock coming to town. That'll be fun. KK Robinson coming back, Darrell Walker on November 22nd, Maryland Eastern Shore November 25th, and then North Carolina A&T on December 21st in Oakland, which will be interesting because obviously that is the team that put John Calipari out of the NCAA tournament with that upset game, the Jack Golke 10 3-pointer game last season. So maybe he can exact a little bit of revenge there. That's on December 30th. So 12 out of 13 non-conference games that are accounted for there. Looking at potential dates for that final game, I don't know, maybe November 19th, if you could fit something in early there. Maybe somewhere in that week between December 7th and 14th when they're off. Although I don't know if that's finals week. Sometimes they don't like to play those midweek games on finals week. So I don't know how that would work. One interesting thing that it's kind of got my attention. There's a bye this year in the SEC schedule the last week of January where Arkansas just doesn't have a midweek game scheduled. Cal that's where he fed Gonzaga in last year. If you remember that, when Gonzaga came to Rupp Arena. That was later in the year. I think it was either late January or early February, similar situation. So if you're thinking about, well, maybe he's trying to, get a banger for that last game and get a good team into Fayetteville, into Bud, that could be a place where he could fit it in. And that's true. The only thing about that, though, is do you really want to do that before the stretch of games that's coming up? Because yes, you do have a week off. You could fit a game in there. It would be fine. But right after that, you're at Kentucky, at Texas, and then you get Bama at home over a span of 7 days. So that is really, really tricky. Would they do that? I don't know. I would probably vote no on that, but we'll see what Cal winds up doing with this final game here. Folks, we all absolutely love going to live events, whether it's the big game, concerts, comedy, you name it. But getting tickets can really, really be a pain sometimes. That's why the Gametime app has become my go-to, honestly, when I'm on the hunt for tickets and finding the seats that I want for the events I want to go to. If you're looking for last-minute tickets to Arkansas's game at Oklahoma State Saturday morning, Gametime has you covered with an easy-to-use app. It's got great features like the super deal where they hit you with the top values for seat and price for the event that you're trying to attend, as opposed to trying to sift through so many different options and find the right thing. They do that for you. It's really beneficial. You can also get an actual view from your seat before you hit purchase, which is always a nice feature to have as well. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. What time is it? It's game time. All right, everybody, back for the final segment here of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, the Pot at the Palace edition. And like I said at the top of the show, I think we all agree that Cal's put together a super talented roster, but maybe they're not as talented as we thought they were. Really interesting. I saw this tweet from CBK Basketball Report last night of the top 50 most talented teams in college basketball. It's according to BartTorvik.com, which, if you're wondering what that is, it's an analytics based site. It's very similar to KenPom, and it's going to be one of the metrics that's used by the NCAA tournament selection committee this season. So it's becoming a bigger and bigger deal, but it's a site that I use all the time with a lot of really good information, but it's kind of surprised me with this one. I was floored by the list when I looked at it. Like, you can be skeptical about Cal and will he find success in the NCAA tournament? Will he adapt and learn from his mistakes? Whatever. Does Arkansas have enough depth? Do they have enough shooting? But I don't think talent is in question. To me, you can't convince me that Arkansas is the 18th most talented team in the country, which is according to this list. That's absurd. Some of the teams in front of them, it just really baffled me. I'm like, without Googling it right now, for anybody who's watching or listening, tell me one player on Penn State's roster. Like, name the last draft pick that came out of Penn State. No disrespect. That's just a team that was right in front of Arkansas. It's crazy that they're more talented. I look at some of the other teams that were on that list above the Hogs. Wake Forest, Providence, Georgetown. Georgetown's been a mess. Like, what are we talking about here? That can't be right. It just can't be. So essentially, I had to go do some digging and figure out exactly what was going on here. And then I found that Torvik himself kind of clarified that talent metric that they're using, it's specifically based on the high school rankings, recruiting rankings of a roster. Okay, so that clears it up a little bit. It's not, it doesn't take into account the transfer portal rankings or whatever. Like Nelly Davis, for example, he was a 5-star transfer. He's the number 1 ranked transfer in the country this offseason, according to on3.com. But I don't even think he had a recruiting ranking coming out of high school. So that kind of stuff factors into it. So it cleared it up a little bit. It's still weird, though, because, you've got 3 incoming 5-star freshmen. You have a former top 10 5-star in DJ Wagner, a top 40, guy. He was top 40. Jonas Adu, 4-star. coming out of high school. Adu Thiero was a coveted 4-star. The list kind of goes on and on. But at least it makes a little more sense from that standpoint. So anybody who saw that and reacted to it on Twitter, and I did right away, was like, what in the world is this? It's crazy. Well, there's a little bit of the context for you. But then I kept messing around on that site, and I've talked about this before on the show. And, they've got Arkansas projected as the 31st ranked team in the country in the preseason. That still feels low, I feel like, for this Arkansas team. So what gives? Like if the selection committee is going to be using this tool, I want to understand it, right? Well, I go to their player projections page, which is really cool. It's kind of projects the top 10 guys in the rotation, what they think in terms of their points per game, rebounds per game, their contributions that they're going to make. And I'm looking around. DJ Wagner is nowhere to be found in the top 10 contributors. And then you have Melo Sanchez and Cash Chavis both in the projected rotation. So it was really weird. And the thing is, like a week ago, I was on there and DJ Wagner was projected as Arkansas' second leading scorer behind Nelly Davis. And now he's just nowhere to be found on this list. Like, did he get deleted from the database? Like, what's going on here? I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. And again, it's not that big of a deal. It's the off season projections, whatever. Nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. But to me, I don't know if your analytics are going to play a role this year in determining NCAA tournament teams and resumes and where folks are seated. You probably want to get it right. You know what I mean? I think that would help a little bit. And so I wonder, if Arkansas is 31st without DJ Wagner and, with a couple guys who you don't project in the rotation, in the projected rotation, according to them, if you just get it right and add DJ back in there, how far up does Arkansas jump from 31st? Probably a lot closer to where we all kind of expect them to be, which I think is a pretty unanimous top 25 team. And then it got me to wondering about that team talent deal where, if it's based on the high school rankings of everybody, well, if DJ is not on the projected contributors page of that, then are they even taking into account DJ Wagner in that talent metric? Because again, that's a former top 10 5-star prospect who was a McDonald's All-American. So you add him, and then all of a sudden Arkansas probably jumps up from 18th in that metric, which is a little bit misleading, like we talked about. But then they probably jump up a lot higher, closer to where we would all expect them to be. So at any rate, had to get that off my chest. I saw that was hotly reacted to on Twitter, and I just thought there's no way this is right. So I had to do a little bit of digging to come in here and clarify. Right? Okay. Well, hey, I appreciate everybody for tuning in as always. Really do hope everybody has a great weekend. Enjoy that Razorback football game. We'll see if they come back home from Stillwater with a victory. This has been Curtis Wilkerson with the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, the Pod at the Palace edition, and we will catch you guys next time. Everybody